Hi, everyone. Welcome to the info session for the media category of the NYC Women's Fund. I'll wait a couple more minutes just to see if anyone else will be joining us. Okay, let's get started. So hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Moten, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm one of the program officers in NYFA's Grants and Awards Department. This presentation is an info session for the NYC Women's Fund media category. The NYC Women's Fund is a signature initiative that addresses the underrepresentation of women in the entertainment industry. The fund provides grants to encourage and support the creation of content that reflects the voices and perspectives of all who identify as women. Today, we'll be reviewing an overview of the media category. We'll discuss eligibility criteria. I'll go over how to apply, and then we'll go over all the details of the application form, including just an overview, work samples, budgets, questions and tips, the demographic questions, and assistance in applying. And then finally, we'll talk about evaluation and the selection process. And then after that, we'll have a Q&A. If you have any questions, you can start dropping them in the chat or use the Q&A function, and I'll answer those at the end. Applications close Wednesday, November 1st at 11:59 p.m. Applicants will be notified by March 2024, and then projects must be completed by March 31st, 2025. The fund provides grants to encourage and support the creation of content that reflects the voices and perspectives of all who identify as women. The fund provides grants for the creation of film, web series, and digital projects. The options are fiction feature, where you can receive up to $50,000, fiction short, where you can receive up to $25,000, fiction webisode or web series, where you can receive up to $20,000, and then also all categories, but with documentary. So documentary feature, documentary short, and then documentary web series or webisodes. To be eligible for this opportunity, projects need to have completed principal photography. Principal photography is the production stage of a media project where filming occurs. Only projects that have wrapped filming and are entering post-production will be considered eligible for this grant. Projects must be made by, for, or about women and women-identified individuals. Projects are eligible if they include or feature any of the following: a prominent woman-identified perspective, a meaningful woman-identified producer credit, a meaningful woman-identified writing credit, or a woman-identifying protagonist. Projects must be completed by March 31st, 2025. Projects must have wrapped principal photography and are able to submit a timeline that outlines a final cut and distribution that will meet the program deadline of March 31st, 2025. Eligible projects can be live action or animated. The applicant can either be the director or producer, and the applicant or the recipient of funds must reside in one of the 5 boroughs of New York City. The funds must be used to complete the project outlined in the application form. Funds may be allocated as the applicant needs to complete the project. However, funds cannot be used to purchase capital goods. And also, projects must follow at least one of the two criteria. 75% of rehearsal and recording dates have to take place in New York City, or 75% of production costs or qualified production costs. Funds can be used for any purpose critical to the completion of the project. Okay, so in order to apply, you start by creating a free submittable account, and then you can begin the online application. In order to have access to the online application, you have to complete an eligibility form. And then after that, you can fill out the online application. And finally, you submit your application and receive an email confirmation. So here's all the information that the application form asks for. You'll enter basic information like your name, your address, email, phone number, and contact info. You'll say your project name and running time, a synopsis of the project. You'll answer a question about how your project shows a women identified perspective. You'll include your production schedule and plans, promotion and distribution plans. You'll discuss your target audience and include artist bios. You'll submit work samples, and then your budget, which will have to have all income and expenses and a total dollar amount. And then finally, there's a budget narrative question that asks how you will spend the grant. Okay, so as far as work samples, you should include 2 work samples from the project that you're seeking support for. For documentary and fiction feature, you can submit up to a short clip that's 5 minutes in length, and then a longer sample that's up to 40 minutes that gives a sense of the overall film. And then for short and web series projects, you submit a clip up to 5 minutes in length, and then again, a longer sample of up to 40 minutes. Just as a note, you don't have to submit a complete 40 minutes. This is up to 40 minutes. And some additional information about the work samples is that uploading video files can take a lot more time than expected, so don't wait until the last minute to upload them. There's a metadata text box that you can use to provide context for the clips that you upload. We ask that you don't submit video samples that are multiple clips from different projects, only submit clips from the project that you're applying with. We won't accept sizzle reels or trailers. Titles and credits should not be included in the excerpts. And then finally, we just understand that this will probably be unfinished footage. It does not have to be a continuous sequence, but should clearly communicate the important or representative moments in your project. And then here's a couple additional information about the work samples. We recommend that you export it as an MP4 and use the H.624 codec. We'll accept work samples as a .mov or .mp4 files. And then before you upload a file, just double check to make sure that it's working. And when you submit your link for the long work sample, just make sure that the link is active until notifications are made next year. So that just means that make sure your Vimeo or your YouTube link stays active during the entire process. As I mentioned earlier, applicants are required to submit an overall budget, and we provide a budget template that you can use, or you can upload your own. And here's a screenshot of what it looks like. And here's another image of what the budget looks like. Okay, the application also asks some demographic questions. We require that all applicants complete the demographic questionnaire. The answers to these questions will not affect your application's review by the selection panel, and the answer to these questions will remain anonymous. There's also the option of selecting prefer not to say when you're responding to these questions. As far as assistance in applying, NYFA is committed to supporting artists from all backgrounds. If you want to request an accommodation, you can send us an email or give us a call. We just request that you let us know before October 11th so we have adequate time to support you. Applicants can only submit in one category with one project. Again, this is a project-based grant and the funds are finishing grants. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us directly at nycwomen'sfund@NYFA.org. And here's some details about the evaluation and selection process. All applications are peer reviewed by a selection panel comprised of discipline-specific industry professionals. The applications are reviewed by the respective selection panels. The panelists change from year to year. Applications are reviewed over multiple elimination rounds, and all applications are checked by our staff for eligibility. Eligible applications are scored by peer review panels based on the following criteria: creativity and artistic merit, prominent women's perspective, and art project feasibility. The final grant award amounts are determined by the selection panel. And then again, if you have questions, you can visit our website where we have guidelines and a frequently asked questions section. And again, you can just contact us directly at nycwomen'sfund@nyfa.org. And now I'll jump into the Q&A and answer any questions that you might have. The first question is, will this info session be sent out to registrants? No, but it will be available to view on our website. Someone asked, if I'm on a F1 visa in the US, is that an issue for eligibility? No, as long as you have NYC residency and can provide a tax ID number, you can still apply. There's a question that asks, does the applicant have to be an individual? We are an NYC-based nonprofit, and we're hoping to apply as an organization. You can apply as an organization, but you would still have to have someone like apply as a recipient. So the producer of the project can apply, or the director of the project can apply. Someone asked, if all post-production is occurring in New York, does that qualify as production funds? Yes. And then there's a second part of the question that says, should the short 5-minute clip be from the same project as the 40-minute clip? Yeah, the work samples have to be from the project that you're applying for. So it should be from the same project. Another question asks, I have a longer work sample that is 50 minutes. Should I cut this down to 40 minutes? Yes, because we will only accept up to 40 minutes. And then there's an additional question that says, should I use the video with the expectation that the reviewers will only watch 40 minutes? No, you have to cut it down to 40 minutes. Someone asks, is there someone that we can contact if we have further questions regarding technical specifications for the work sample? Our editor has specific questions. Yeah, you can contact us directly at nycwomen'sfund@nyfa.org. There is a question that says, so to confirm, this grant cycle is for video project completion support, but do you have a separate grant cycle for projects at the pre-production or production stage? No, this opportunity is only for projects that have already completed the shooting. And this is just because that these are finishing funds. Someone asked, are festival submission fees considered marketing and distribution? Yes. Okay. Someone has a 3-part question, and this says, if the project you are applying for has already received a NYSCA grant in 2023, are you still eligible to apply for the Women's Fund? I honestly don't know the answer to that question, and I can follow up with you offline about that. I believe that if you received it in the past, you're totally fine to apply for this, but if it's the same year, I'm not sure. The second part of that question says, if 10% of the footage was shot in New York City and the rest was shot in Elizabeth, New Jersey, but 100% of the post-production is being done in NYC, are you still eligible? Yeah, because 100% of the post-production will be completed in New York, you would still be eligible. And then the final part of that question asks, is your application less competitive if the majority of the filming was not done in New York City? No, of course, like this would be up to the panelists to make the final decisions, but there's nothing that like specifies that the project has to be completely shot in New York City. Someone asked, are fiction podcasts eligible? No, no podcasts are eligible for this opportunity. There's a question that asks about the criteria for judging and evaluation. I'll scroll back up to that. Is there anything specific you have question-wise as far as the evaluation or selection process? This also will be available to view online after the session is over if you wanted to just refer back to it. There's another question that says, I'm working on a film that is co-directed and co-produced by a woman and a man. The man is a New York City resident and the woman is a resident of a different state. Is the project eligible? Yes, you can apply as long as you have a New York City residency. Another question is asking, for short films, is the grant only for the completion or also for production funds? No, these are only finishing funds, so you have to have already shot your project. There's a question that asks about how many applicants apply for the finishing grants. This number varies from year to year. I will say that I honestly don't know the exact numbers off top, but the short categories usually have more applications than the feature categories. There's a question that says, I see that the grant breaks out post-production and distribution. Can this grant cover distribution too, or are filmmakers expected to raise that money elsewhere? You can use up to 20% of your budget towards distribution, and you can include that on your budget when you apply. Someone asked, what proof of residency do you require? And we just require you to have a New York City address. There's a question that asks, have audio projects been recipients of grants in the past? No, does not include like podcasts, but if you do have a music project, there is a music category that you can apply in. There's a question that says, if we're required to have completed production, why do you require a production timeline? The timeline is to consider like the post-production as well. So we're looking more so for post-production timeline. There is a question that asks again about the residency requirements, and we're just requiring you to live in one of the 5 boroughs of New York City. There's a question that is asking, if you have long videos and want to cut them into more fun shorts, is that an eligible project? Yes, I think I would need more information on this, but yeah, if you have like a longer project that you want to create as a short, then it should be eligible. This question is asking, if a director just moved outside of New York City but was living in New York City when principal photography took place, is that eligible? The producer lives in Brooklyn and can apply as well. What would you suggest? You should apply as a producer because you're still living in New York City. If you're no longer living in New York, you would not be eligible. Someone just asked me to scroll back to the work sample slide. And again, all this information is available on our website, and this video will be posted on YouTube so that you can go back to it if necessary. Okay, another question is asking, if I'm applying with one project and I'm a part of a group of creatives on a different project in a different category, does that affect eligibility for either of the projects? Yes, you can only apply with one project per cycle. Another question is asking, can you please give some examples of eligible finishing costs? So that would be anything from like, specifically like paying your editor for post-production, just anything that like helps you complete your project. I'm trying to think of other ideas off the top of my head, but again, like anything specific to the completion of the project would be eligible finishing costs. Another question asks, why two different work samples? What is the function of each? Because in the first round of review, the panelists will look at the first work sample, the shorter one, and then in the second round of review, panelists will look at the full 40-minute or less work sample. There's another question that says, can concept art illustrations be uploaded as well as or only video formats? We only accept videos for the work samples. Someone is saying that they live upstate and their project is New York City based. Are they still eligible? No, you have to be located in one of the 5 boroughs of New York City. Another question asks, what should the focus be of the 5-minute clip versus a longer 40-minute clip? It's really up to you. Both clips are just to show like the scope of your project. I honestly would probably focus on making sure that no matter what clip you use, it's just a strong part of your project. Someone said the entire short has a range time of 12 to 15 minutes. For the long work sample, should we strive for uploading the entire short? It's honestly up to you. You don't have to upload the entire short, but because it is under the timeline or requested length of time, you could do that and that would be fine. Someone is asking about what qualified production costs are, and that would just be anything that you spend that's in New York City. There is a question about how many grants are given in each category. That varies from year to year. Does the work submitted need to be completed this year? Can the project be completed before 2023? The project has to be within the same timeline as our application period. So what I mean is essentially like you can't apply the funds retroactively. So it would have to be completed by 2025. If you're halfway through animating an episode, is it okay to apply for the grant? Yeah, animated projects are eligible for this if that's what you're asking. I'm honestly not sure if that answers your question, so please feel free to expand on that in the chat. Should the 5-minute clip be the strongest section of the film, like a scene, versus the 40-minute clip showcasing more of the film? It's up to you. I personally would make sure that the shorter clip is the strongest section of the film, since that's what the panelists will be reviewing first. And then there is another part of that question that says, it says to keep titles out of the sample. So the 40-minute version should start after the opening title if we edited together more of the feature film. Yeah, you don't have to include the title of the film. Someone asks, is a project less competitive based on how many people are involved? No. We have a 20-minute sample currently edited. Can we submit significantly less than 40 minutes, or is a longer sample required to be competitive? No, there's no specifics around there's nothing specific that the panelists are going to be looking for as far as time, as long as you stay under that 40-minute guideline that we have. There's nothing that would be more competitive if it's a shorter versus a longer sample. There is a question that says, can you share an overview of a couple previous recipients' projects, specifically curious of how prominent women's perspectives have been chosen in the past? I can't during this presentation, but if you go on our website, every year we have listed the previous winners and you can look those up and review what their projects are about. If we've had in-kind deferred expenses on the budget, should we include what has been donated in terms of time services as budget lines with equivalent monetary value? Yeah, you can do that and just, of course, label it to say that it was in-kind or deferred. Someone is asking, regarding the public access component of the grant, can it be more specific than just the general public? For example, if we wanted our public access component free showings in New York City high schools, could that be a possibility? Yeah, essentially, when you get to this point in your project, you would reach out to NYFA and we would discuss along with MOME to see what would be a good fit for your public access component. So potentially, yes, that could work. I like can't answer that like definitively at this moment, but I'm sure that that could be a possibility. Can the funds be used for animation as a part of a documentary short? Principal photography has been completed. Yes. Someone is asking, how do these finishing funds relate to NYFA fellowships? Are they unrelated? What do grantees owe NYFA? Appearances, use of name and image, budget actuals. There are details of this on the website. I don't have everything in front of me, but essentially you would have to put a credit for NYFA and MOME at the end of your project. And I believe when you sign your contract, there's also like the use of your name and image for, I'm not sure like the specific amount of time, but like we would use your image to potentially promote this opportunity in the following year. Someone is asking, if I raise money for posts and then apply for this grant, am I allowed to pay back investors out of this grant, assuming that the post cost would be eligible under the grant rules? Because there's a long time between the application date and the decision date where I assume you would be working on posts. I'm not sure if I'm answering this question, so feel free to like respond again in the chat, but you can't retroactively pay yourself for this project using this grant. Someone is asking, would additional shoot pickup days count as finishing costs if 80% of the movie is already shot? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that that would be fine. Because again, like these are finishing funds and everything is already shot. It's just, of course, like pickup shoots. That's fine. Someone asked the maximum percentage that NYFA will cover. I'll scroll back up to that section. So for features is up to 50,000, for shorts is up to 25,000, and for web series is up to 20,000. Someone is asking, should the 5-minute sample be cut like a scene? Yeah, I wouldn't suggest uploading like just random clips of your project. I think a scene would make the most sense because we're looking to just see like what the project is going to look like. Someone asked, what is the duration of samples for a short film that is shorter than 40 minutes? Should we still submit a 5-minute sample and a longer sample with the full duration of the short? Yeah, you can submit the entire short if it's under 40 minutes. That's fine. Someone is asking, how strict are the feature and documentary categories? What if a project is an experimental video? Would that be eligible? Honestly, I believe it's like, it depends on what you're proposing. If you have more details about what this video would be, you can email us and I'll answer your question like directly with you. But I believe experimental video would be fine as long as it still like fits within what we're asking for as far as like running time for a feature. Someone said, given your explanation of the difference between the short and long work samples, it seems like it makes sense to consider including the short one and the longer one if it's one of the more powerful scenes we're including, or will the repetition be annoying for the panelists? I can't answer on behalf of the panelists, but it is fine to include that short scene in your longer one. Someone asked, can the short clip be a trailer or should it be a sample scene? We don't accept trailers, so it would have to be a sample scene. There's a question asking about sample successful applications. I personally don't have any that I can show you, but you can go on our website and look at the winners from the previous years. There's a question that says, if I'm applying with an animated project, would a rough cut of the animate be roughly equivalent to principal photography? Yes, I don't remember the exact number off top. I can send you an email after this if you just want to contact me. But I believe if 50% of the animation is completed, that's equivalent to principal photography. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but like I said, if you email me at NYC Women's Fund, I'll get the exact number and get back to you. Someone asked, can we apply as long as we have completed production, or can we have completed production by next March? You have to have completed production already to apply. Are we required to submit any invoices or receipts for the cost of post-production by March 2025 or at any point? There will be an interim report and a final report that you have to fill out. And we don't specifically ask for receipts, but we do ask for a budget. So you wouldn't have to like gather all of your receipts or anything, but you will have to have like that information included in like a budget narrative. There's another question about how much animation has to be completed in order to be considered principal photography. And like I said, if you email me directly, I can get that number for you and discuss it offline. There's a question that says when the project must be completed. The film must be completed in March of 2025. So the recipients will be announced March of next year, and then you have a full year to complete your project. Someone is asking, can you explain further the public access that we need to give? Is it being posted on Vimeo enough, or does it have to be a full in-person screening? You can post it as long as it's accessible to NYC residents. It would be considered your public access. So for example, you could post the video on YouTube or Vimeo and have it for free. You can have an in-person screening. Honestly, you can just, there's like a section if you were to receive the grant in your contract that basically says like you can do basically anything as long as you get approval from MOME and NYFA. So you could also just come up with something and we can work with you to see if it's something that would be applicable for the public access. Someone says that they're a past NYFA fellow, are they ineligible? No, you're not ineligible. You can receive any NYFA grant and still apply. Someone said, regarding percentage, is it possible to ask for the grant to pay the entirety of the post-production cost if they're under the maximum dollar amount, or do we need to show other funders? Yeah, you can apply for anything within the maximum dollar amount. So if that would be the entirety of your post-production costs, that would be fine, as long as it's under what the options are per category. There's a question about retroactively paying someone, and no, you cannot retroactively pay anyone. There's a question that asks about the quality of video. It says I'm assuming how much are the panelists focused on the quality of video? Our project is a documentary, so the footage is intentionally old. That's a hard question to answer because of course, like it's going to depend on like the panelists and what they're looking for. But I personally would say that if you're applying with a documentary and the intent is for the footage to be old, you can of course like explain that in like the metadata field for your work sample so that they would understand like what your intention is. So someone is asking again about retroactive payments. The question is essentially saying that If they have payment plans on work that is completed earlier in the timeline, but would be continuing after March 2024, could they pay people then? Yeah, so essentially what I'm saying is that anything that you would, if you receive the grant in March of 2024, you can pay people for any work that they do from 2024 onward. So if you apply with a project and you're paying an editor out of pocket right now, want to reimburse yourself, that's not something that you could do. But if it's after the point of receiving the grant, then you can pay people out, if that makes sense. If you have more questions about that though, you can also email me and I can like get more specific. Someone is asking, they're saying that this is a long timeline, especially for short films. If a film has already completed principal photography, then waiting 5 months to do work on post-production is a long time to wait. Since payment can be used to reimburse what's already been paid for, would it be acceptable to ask your post-production crew to accept deferred payment? Yeah, of course, that will work. There's a question that asks, is there a minimum amount of time the longer clip has to be? For example, in addition to the 5-minute clip, can we provide a 5 to 7 minute clip if the short is very short? No, there's no minimum amount of time that the clip has to be. So whatever it can be as short as you need it to be. Someone is asking, is the project less competitive if it is completed soon after the announcement is made, like summer or fall of 2024? No, it doesn't make it less competitive. I will say that, again, the panelists are like looking for project feasibility. So of course, like it's going to be dependent on them and like what they're just deciding, but it's not like there's like a question on the application that's super specific about like, oh, is this project going to be completed really early in 2024? If we receive any additional grants or funds between now and March 2024 announcement, do we have to disclose these funds to NYFA? Would this disqualify our application? No, you don't have to disclose that to NYFA and it wouldn't disqualify your application. There's a question that says, once the grants are given, how is the money distributed to the winners? The grants are distributed in three different installments. You receive 50% after you immediately like are accepted as a recipient. And then after you complete an interim report, you will receive 40%, and that's at picture lock. And then when your project is complete and you've scheduled the public access, you'll receive the last 10% of your award. Someone is asking, am I eligible if I applied last year for another project? Yes. Someone is asking for a public screening. Is there a maturity rating applicable for the films accepted? No. There is another question that says, if I received a NYSCA grant, am I eligible? Yes. And then someone is asking for the email for follow-up questions. I'm going to scroll back down to the section, but it's NYC Women's Fund at NYFA.org. There's a question that says, if I'm the editor of my project, can I use the funds to pay myself for what is budgeted in application? Yeah, you could pay yourself as the editor. Someone is asking if at least 75% of our post-production costs will be in New York City. Are we eligible even if most of the production happened out of New York State? Does the 75% relate to the entire film budget or to the amount that the NYFA grant would be covering? The first half of that question, the answer would be yes, because your post-production would still be happening in New York. The second part of that question, does the 75% relate to the entire film budget? It would be the entire film budget, not just what the NYFA grant would cover. And again, if you need to ask additional questions, my name is Rachel, and you can reach out at NYC Women's Fund at NYFA.org. Do the artist bios have to include every person involved in the project or just the artist bio of the recipient? You can just include the artist bio of the recipient, but we do ask for like key collaborators. So if you want to include like your producer or your DP or anything that's like, you know, central to the project, that's fine to include as well. There's a question that asks, can I pay myself as a director? Yes. Someone is asking if 80 or 100% of the production took place in New York City, how much of the post needs to take place in New York? There's no specifics around that as long as 75% or more of production took place in New York. There's a question I asked what the artist bios have to include. There's no specifics around that. Personally, when applying for opportunities like this, I would just include like the basics about who I am, like what work that I've done previously, just like general information about yourself as an artist. There's another question to ask, does NYFA ever award partial amounts of what is applied for? Are we more likely to receive grants if we ask for less? Yeah, partial amounts are sometimes awarded, and you're not more likely to receive a grant if you ask for less funding. The panelists end up making the final decisions on how much each recipient is awarded. For short film projects, does production have to be wrapped by the time we apply? Yes, for all projects, production has to be wrapped by the time that you apply. I'm scrolling through, but if there are any additional questions, please send them in the Q&A. Someone asked, is there an issue of I'm the producer, director, and editor of the film? No, that's totally fine. Someone is asking, would impact be considered as a part of finishing? For example, paying for venues for screenings or travel costs for protagonists to attend speaking events, etc. Yeah, but that would be under marketing and distribution, so it would have to be less than 20% of your ask. Someone is asking for my name. My name is Rachel, and again, you can email me at nycwomensfund@nyfa.org. Someone is asking about if this video will be available later, and yes, it'll be on YouTube later this week. Is there a preference for answering questions in the first or third person, which is customary? There's no specifics around that. You can choose whatever is most comfortable for you when you apply. If 100% of production took place in Europe, but 100% of post-production will take place in New York City, will my project be eligible? Yes. Many festivals require the film to not have been screened when applying. Should that be specified in the application? You can include that, but panelists will be aware of this. Again, like the panelists that we're selecting are film professionals, so they do know about like festival requirements. Do we have any additional questions? You can submit them in the Q&A or in the chat. Do budget lines need to demonstrate New York City affiliation for showing percentage of work? I'm not sure what you mean by that. If you're asking specifically if you need to like show exactly like what parts of the budget like would take place in New York. So like your editing, you don't have to include that on the budget, but in like the budget narrative question, you can be more specific about that. Can the grant money cover editing and promotion costs? Yes, because these are finishing funds, of course, they can cover editing. And as far as marketing and promotion, it would just have to be under 20% of what you're requesting. There's a question about how do we present the timeline? Are you asking as far as like in the application, how you would share your timeline? Or do you mean like after, if you were to receive it, what the like timeline would be? Do we need fiscal sponsorship to receive this grant? No, you don't. When you said 75% of production must be in New York City, does that mean 75% of the film needs to be set in New York City or shown in New York City? We shot in 3 states. There's no specifics around it having to be set in New York City. There have been awardees that have had their projects set in many other like cities in different countries and stuff. It's just that the production, so like, for example, like the editing of the film, 75% of it would have to take place in New York City. Oh, okay. And the follow-ups for the timeline, you don't have to be like very specific with dates, but I would suggest including like the exact timeline of what you're planning so that the panelists can get a good idea of like what the timeline looked like. If you don't have the exacts, of course, like that's totally fine too. Someone is asking if the project is directed, written, and edited by a woman, but the central character is a man, is it eligible? Yes. I can scroll back up to that section that kind of talks a little bit more about that. So projects are eligible, but they must, if they are made for, by, or about women or women identified individuals. Do we have any additional questions? There are people with raised hands. You can just submit your questions in the Q&A box and I can answer them. When will grants be distributed and how? Grants will be distributed after the March 2024 deadline. I honestly don't know the exacts of the timeline of distribution, but for like the first payment, but for the second payment, it'll be once you've completed picture lock, and the final payment will be once you've finished your project and scheduled your public access component. Someone is asking, is music scoring eligible? If you're asking if that would be like an eligible expense, yes, because that would be considered finishing funds or used for finishing funds. Can I apply if I want to use the funds to extend my current completed short documentary? Um, if you're extending your project, no, because it has to be a new project. But if you're planning on creating a feature based on a short documentary, that's fine. There's a question that's asking if nonprofits can apply or can you apply as an individual? You would have to apply as individuals technically, but like we understand that like groups of people like apply because like especially like in film, like there's not just one person that's doing everything. So when you do apply, you would just include, I guess, the other members of your nonprofit group as your key collaborators. There's a question about the public access component and where information on that is available. It's all available on our website under the guidelines section. There's a question that's asking about how do we show that 75% of the production takes place in New York City? When you're answering your budget narrative question, you can describe that. There's a question that says, can you explain further what we have to put in the income section of the budget? What if we haven't made anything back from the production? Is that an issue? No, if you haven't made anything back from the production, that's not an issue. But in the income section, we're asking for whatever other funds that you've received. So if you've received other grants or just other like in-kind money or anything like that, that's what you would include in your income section. Is there an option in the application to submit prior work? No, the work samples just have to be from the project that you're applying with. Again, you can submit any questions that you have in the Q&A section, or you can email me directly at nycwomen'sfund@nyfa.org. If the project is a project eligible if it's co-directed by a woman and a man? Yes. Someone is asking if in-kind needs to be included in the budget, or is that optional? You should include all of the income that you have in your budget. Do we have any final questions? Okay, so if there are no more questions, again, you can visit us at NYFA.org/NYC Women's Fund, and the guidelines are there for you to view, as well as some frequently asked questions. And then again, you can contact me. My name is Rachel at NYC Women's Fund at NYFA.org, and I can answer any questions that you have. I will be posting this video on YouTube in the next few days so that you'll have access to it. But in order to access it, you can just go to NYFA's website, and under the NYC Women's Fund section, there will be links to it at the bottom. Okay, well, thank you all for joining. Again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me directly. Thank you.